Okay, welcome, Wildcat Economics. We are very excited today to have Steve Handy with us. Steve Handy is a lot of things. I've got an entire list of things you're involved in, Steve. But I want to focus on a little bit of your background and then how that kind of guides into what we're going to be talking about today. Ultimately, what we're talking about today is something that you've been recently doing here with the Crossroads Economics Center. And this podcast, Wildcat Economics, is a part of that Crossroads Economics Center outreach. But this is actually like boots on the ground. We have some actual economic report that's come out with your help. Numbers.
Hard numbers, guys.
Hard numbers.
So let me go ahead and do my best to introduce you.
Thanks, and I'll
and you fill in the gaps.
Fill in gaps. Yeah.
So Steve Handy has served 12 years in the Utah House of Representatives. So I think it's important to note when I was coming up through college, I didn't realize that there are federal senators and federal representatives, but even more important, there are state senators and state representatives who do very similar things. So when you live in a city, there's a city council, and that city council kind of helps direct local laws, but that city is directed by the state, and the state has legislators as well, and then the states are directed by federal legislators. So it's kind of, all trickles down, but I think it's important to note that we do have a similar setup at the state level, and Mr. Steve Handy has been, a part of that House of Representatives for a long time. But also, you're currently doing a lot. You're part of. You've served on natural resources, agricultural, environmental quality subcommittees. I was reading today that you've been in marketing. You have your own marketing company, and you seem to have a great focus on energy and environmental.
Right.
Basically, the idea is we're going to talk about today, but it's called the Western Way. Right. And I'm going to give you guys the stage to talk about this. But essentially, it's the idea that, as conservatives, we often hear environmentalism, and we take a pause, right? I'm saying I should say conservatives, because there's a lot of politics behind that word. And this is an approach to saying, look, Utah and the United States in general has great natural resources, and some of these environmental issues need to be addressed, but can be addressed in a way that involves private business. Mm-hmm. And so really excited to dive into that today, but Steve, I want to give you some time to talk about your background, fill in any of the gaps that may help us today with as we talk more about the Western Way.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate being here with both of you today, and this is an exciting opportunity. Just a little bit about myself, Connor and Andrew. So yeah, exactly. I live in Layton, but I was born and raised in Ogden, so I have a deep respect and admiration for Weber State University, and I actually had a little bit of time here on campus, and so I know my way around, and I'm on and off campus all the time. And so when I've been attracted to public service, and I was on the Layton City Council for 2 terms, and then the opportunity came to go into the Utah Legislature. And it's sometimes in life, as you guys know, it's better to be lucky than good. And I was in a lucky spot, one of the senior legislators, because my background is communications and marketing and public relations, and I spent 17 years as the marketing director for traditional newspapers. You guys are too young to know about newspapers. But anyway, I was the director of marketing.
News what?
Yeah, I was the director of marketing for the paper here in Ogden, the Standard Examiner, and then for a dozen years at the Deseret News. And I've experienced all kinds of disruption in my career. And anyway, so as you indicated, I've had my own business since about 2000 and done a lot of great fun things. But it gave me some flexibility to get involved in public service. So when I started in the legislature in 2010, one of the senior legislators came to me and put his arm around me in a way, and he said, Steve, he said, I'm going to be around here not much longer, but we need someone who wants to pick up and understand energy. I think you'd be perfectly suited. And I was like, well, I don't come from any kind of an energy background. I come from a communications and marketing and business background. Well, I'll teach you. So cool. So I started going to all kinds of seminars, everything like that. Traveled all over the country on these committees, having all these presentations and learning that I did not really understand, that we are in the midst, the United States, the world is in the midst of an amazing energy transition. Mm-hmm. An amazing energy transition. So I'm going along. I'm chairing the committee. I at Public Utilities, Energy, and Technology in the House of Representatives. I'm carving out a little bit of credibility. I'm starting to run bills, and we have it was about 2016 or so. We were invited to a lunch, and I was working on energy and then on the Natural Resources Committee, and we were invited to lunch to meet some guys from the Western Way from Colorado. What's that? And so these guys came and met with a lot of us, and they said, look, we're from Colorado, and we're just here to say we're mainstream conservative Republicans, in which I consider myself to be. And they said, if you guys don't get a seat at the table with the change in energy, the energy transition, the old funny thing, you're going to be lunch. Mm-hmm. And okay, interesting, and we talked about it. And then fast forward into the COVID years, and we're all trying to stay relevant, and it's crazy time. And I met John Karakalakis, who was one of the founders of the Western Way. And the Western Way's purpose is that these guys in Colorado said, hey, we want a seat at the table. So they started raising money, set up this NGO, the Western Way. You talked about the principles. Really, it's looking at market-based solutions to conservation and energy challenges. Mm-hmm. And really what the focus is to provide education to policymakers, to developers, and let it happen on a market-based way. And so he asked me during the COVID time, he said, Steve, I know you're still in office, but this is your background. Would you like to come to work for us? Well, what would I do? Well, we're sustained now that we can put a footprint in Utah. We've got a footprint in Colorado, and now we have a footprint in Arizona and Nevada. And then I found out that the Western Way is the Intermountain affiliate of another really great group called Conservative Energy Network. And has a footprint in about 27 states. So I have been now, over the last about 4 years, 2 or 3 or 4 trips to Washington it's not really to lobby, but to educate and to inform and to work with groups from the transmission people, and a really neat group called CRESS, Citizens Responsible Energy Solutions. Washington, D.C. is full of all of these groups, but these are really great groups to associate with. And so we've really had a blast. So maybe now is the time to tell you about this report, or what should we do? Where would you like to
before
go?
that, I want to just...
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And energy is really popular right now with artificial intelligence, because what's going on in our country, you use that word transition, and I believe that refers to, looking for new ways to produce energy, whether that's through solar, wind, I've heard nuclear, hydrogen, lots of different things than kind of your traditional energy sources, coal and what. As we're along with this, and I know this was all probably in the works before the artificial intelligence boom, but now we actually have private companies like Microsoft, like Meta, who owns Facebook, who are also thinking through energy simply to power the world's infrastructure going forward, because our current resources can't sustain that.
Yeah, we need all the energy we can get. We really do. We really do.
So,
and Governor Cox, our governor, he has this thing called Operation Gigawatt to double Utah's output by 2030, and we can talk about nuclear a little bit going along. But keep going. Yeah.
Well, let me just start before we dive in, Andrew. I was reading an article from the Deseret News this morning on my newspaper, which is the cell phone here.
Yes, on your device.
And funny enough, this article's written by you. Yeah. I'm just going to introduce the first 2 paragraphs. I think this sets the stage well for what we're talking about. It just says, when people think about the economic engines of Utah's future, they tend to picture Silicon Slopes. And that hits close to me. I've worked in Silicon Slopes. I currently work for a Utah tech company. And that really has been a significant boom for our economy over probably the last decade. And it continues on the booming Wasatch Front, or tech companies setting up shop along the I-15 corridor. Those are all important. But there's another economic success story unfolding across the state, one that's happening in the wide open spaces of Beaver, Emory, Iron, and Miller counties,
Yes.
where utility-scale renewable energy products are quietly generating billions of dollars in investment and thousands of jobs. A new study, which we're going to dive into, from the Crossroads Economics Center at Weber State University, shout out, commissioned by the Western Way, puts hard numbers on what many in rural Utah already know. Renewable energy development is one of the most significant economic forces in our state's rural communities.
Yeah. So just a little bit of background on the report itself before we get into the actual numbers. So this is, I consider this kind of a pilot program. The Crossroads Economics Center is still fairly in its infancy, right? I think this is episode 8, right? So we haven't been doing a whole lot.
We're still in the single digits.
Exactly.
I know that.
But one of our pushes is to give our students more experiential learning opportunities, to get their hands dirty, to work with, whether it's potential clients, to really just to give them something that, something tactile that they can, sometimes it is on paper, that they can walk into an interview and say, hey, I've done this before, I can do this for you. And so when this opportunity came through, I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to grab. We had 4 amazing students working on this, running, they were the ones crunching the numbers, gathering the data, doing that type of stuff, putting out the final, at least before we gave it to the graphic designers to make it look nice.
Yeah.
Putting out the final results. And then we had a faculty, one of our faculty members kind of mentoring them, making sure that everything, they dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's and stuff like that. So this particular program, kind of using this going forward, it's going to be an amazing program for the center, for our students, just to kind of take that, like we said, everything that we do here in the Crossroads Economic Center is about taking the amazing resources that we have within our department and figuring out a way to connect that to the local community, and that matches the mission of the university, that matches the mission of the the business school more generally. But anyway, so that's kind of where this report, and I think that's what makes me so excited about this report, is that this is the handiwork of our amazing students. This isn't even this isn't us. This isn't this isn't me. This is not my field of expertise. I did not touch the numbers here, I promise. But it is hopefully going to turn into an amazing program going forward. So with that being said, let's the headline number.
Yeah.
Over $8 billion.
Yeah, and maybe just one more thing, Andrew and Connor, and that is that the National Renewable Energy Lab, the federal government has these renewable energy labs all over the country, and the National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado has developed its, the acronym is the JEDI model. And when we talked to Dr. Roberts about this initially, he says, no, I know about this. And so you are using their model, but you've got to bring in the data, which the students have so adequately done. They've gone to all of the counties in the state of Utah and looked at the tax revenues from these projects, and then all of the formulas and everything like that, and the running the analytics has provided this report. But I think the top line is, and I'm looking at a letter that is addressed to, it says, Dear Senator. And I was telling you before the broadcast that I've just completed, there's 104 Utah legislators, 75 members of the House of Representatives, and 29 senators. And so we've just sent this with a cover letter and the highlights, which I'll hit right now, but to each one of our local legislators to understand this. And I want to talk about that a little bit later on, what the feelings are by some in the legislature about renewable energy.
I'd love to hear about that.
Top line things, $8.4 billion. So the report talks about from 2007 to 2028, pardon me, $8.4 billion in total construction and investment activity. Those are big numbers. And I want to emphasize too, and you sort of alluded to this, that in these rural counties, we're sitting here on the prosperous and prosperous Wasatch Front here in Ogden, but you go down to Beaver and Iron County, and it is tough sledding, and so these utility scale projects are big money. So they've taken all of this, the report, $8.4 billion. 34,600 job years of employment supported by construction. 34,600 plus job years. and $33 million per year in property tax revenue. And you go down there. I've been to a toured a project in Juab County in Mona. It's called there. You can see it as you're heading south on the freeway over there to the west. And that's a huge project that is providing money for the school district, for that county. I mean, they don't have they don't have a Hill Air Force Base like we have sitting right here.
Right.
So it's a big deal, and then 1,500 ongoing jobs and 244.6 million in annual economic output from facility operations, to almost 250 million in output. Yeah. I mean, it is incredibly significant.
Yeah, and just when we're talking about the impact of some of these projects in going through the process. When you're building up these numbers, you start with the baseline. How much does it cost to build the facility?
Right.
To get it all out the door. But then we have what we call the multiplier effect, and really what that is saying that money that went towards building that solar farm, it ended up in people's pockets. It ended up in the construction workers, whoever's running it on a day-to-day basis. That ends up in their pockets. Then they go and they spend it in the local community, and that money then ends up in someone else's pockets, and then they go spend it in the local community. And so when you talk about the overall economic impact, you have to account not just for the headline amount that it costs for construction, but also for those downstream effects as well. That's the overall impact, and that's where we get to this $8.4 billion number.
And one of the knocks, Andrew, is that from some policymakers that I know, Utah legislators, I'm going to say that, about the value of renewable energy projects is, well, you get a bunch of people in there and they do all the construction and they're gone. Well, yeah, they are gone, but there's an impact there. But then, yes, it is typically low employment to maintain this. But look at now, you've transitioned to this incredible throwing off this property tax revenue a year.
Yeah.
So okay, the contractors, the construction people have moved on, but they made an impact in the local community. And like you say, you use your economic modeling and your multiplier effect. Yeah. There it is, quantified.
And exactly like you were saying, also, on an annual basis, like it's still, these facilities still need to be maintained. They still need to be run. It's not like you just build it and you walk away and no one touches it and it just runs automatically.
Exactly right.
We haven't gotten to that point yet. But it is, these projects have not only just that major effect, immediate effect, but it's like dropping a rock in a pond, right? You get the big splash, but then there's also the ripple effect. Exactly. And it eventually impacts the entire community, the entire state.
Yeah. This is interesting. I want to, if you live in Ogden and you've ever driven to St. George, this is kind of what we're talking about. As you're driving to St. George, you're going to see these rural communities.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And it's funny, when I would drive by these communities, I would always ask myself, like, what is going on out here? There's so much land. I see these little communities. What do they do for work? Like, do they just work remote and all these things? And so this kind of hints at there is so much going on outside of our little world here in the Wasatch Front that is not only economically viable, we can see those numbers there, but is crucial to our energy infrastructure. I know I mentioned that at the beginning of the podcast, but it's not just that this is great for our economy. We actually need to find energy sources. And one thing I want to ask is, why Utah? What does Utah have that makes this such a great place for projects like this? Is it our resources, our people? Like, what have you seen? Why would the Western Way approach you and say, we want to go to Utah? What is it about this state?
Well, I think a couple things, and that is that Utah's not a great – Utah's a public land state. About roughly 66% of Utah is federally controlled. I mean, our great national parks and everything like that. But you're Lake Powell and everything, but you're talking about really – 32 million acres of BLM land, Bureau of Land Management, and it's some of it's gorgeous and wonderful and great, some of it's really bad. And for example, if we point to the west here from Weber State out in that west desert, pretty desolate. So anyway, the Bureau of Land Management manages, but Utah is a great state. We're not a good state for wind, but we're a really great state for utility scale solar because of the open spaces and the high altitude. And the high altitude, and I've toured these places, and it's very difficult. Unfortunately, it should be easier to get permits from these developers on federal lands. It just takes way too long, even with a changing in administrations and Republican whatever. It's still too hard to do it. So a lot of these projects are done on what are called SITLA lands. I wonder if your listeners know what that is. At statehood,
I don't know what it is.
Connor doesn't know. If you could explain it to Connor, that'd be great.
Please,
it's stated in 1896. So when Utah became a state, part of the Enabling Act, and if I wish I had it, but it shows it these checkerboard things, and they're what's called the state institutional trust lands, and they are managed by a state agency called SITLA. They are managed by a state agency that their mission and their goal and responsibility is to provide the highest and most economic impact. It could be farming, it could be renewable energy, it could be oil and gas, it could be all these things that then goes to the school children in the state of Utah. So it doesn't go through the state budget, but is directed through SITLA to schools. So you take a school here close to Weber State. I went to high school down the road here at Ogden High, and they might get, I wouldn't be surprised if they get $200,000 a year. It's kind of unrestricted funds that they can get from SITLA. And it's just an amazing thing. And then it's managed by the community council. But anyway, these lands, the permits are a lot easier to get than they are on federal lands. So there's a huge project going out in Green River, Wyoming, which is out there on the border of Green River and Green River, Utah. The border of Utah and Wyoming.
On your way to Moab.
On the one, out in there. And a huge 4 megawatt project of storage and utility scale solar. I mean, it's on SITLA land. I mean, these are huge things, and so that's where it happens. But the other thing, if I can kind of go another direction here, is you take the family farm. You say, or you're driving to St. George, and you're wondering, how do these people make a living?
Yeah. Who lives in Mills?
Who lives in Mills, Utah? And there are these generational family farms, and it's pretty dang tough to make a living in farming. But that's the culture of these people, and that's what they want to do, and that's what they want to pass on to their families. When you can't make it selling, wheat and alfalfa and cattle and horses, they do the best job they can do. But if they can have now a smaller utility scale solar project, for example, that provides a steady source of income, of supplemental income, it's huge. It's a huge thing to be able to sustain that lifestyle that these people have chosen.
Okay, that was something that
Isn't that interesting?
I had never thought of.
Isn't that interesting?
You have these probably 1,000-acre ranches.
Yes.
It's like, hey, if I can parch off, take a part of this, turn it into a small solar farm, I can just use that to generate extra income and help support this rough lifestyle, this up and down lifestyle.
And then I can live the lifestyle I want, raise my cattle and my horses and wheat, and I pass that on to my family, and that's what's happening all over the place. I visited, one of the first ones I visited was over in Weld County, Colorado, a couple of years ago. And I went out there and I thought, there's no water. How do these guys do this? There's no water. And this rancher, he said, this is a generational farm, multiple generations here, and ranch, and we didn't have, and it was it was less than, it was a half acre of a utility scale solar, but just this is our lifeblood. This is giving us on our family new life to have the lifestyle that we want, a rural lifestyle, yet have that steady source of income and not have to be reliant on drought and weather and climate change and all these things to.
Is that income from leasing their land?
Yeah, they'll enter into a long-term lease. Now, the challenge for the developer is the developer has to have what's called a power purchase agreement, a PPA, so that the developer has to be able to sell that typically to the utility, the large utility, the public utility. What is it over in Colorado? Xcel Energy mainly, and in here it's Rocky Mountain Power, but. Then they have to sell that, and they want these additional sources of that. One of the big challenges is transmission, and that's another thing. But that's what they'll do. The developer has to find a purchaser who's going to take the power, and then Joe Farmer, he gets it, and it's all negotiated out of him for multiple years.
Nice. I knew a Joe Farmer. His name was actually Joe Farmer.
He actually was Joe Farmer.
He wasn't a farmer, though.
So, okay, all right.
There you go.
He wasn't a farmer.
All right. What a small world.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, it seems like, we're talking about the report, just from the pure economics, of it. It seems like it's such a huge impact on the economy. But then we start talking about all of these other benefits, right? We're talking about we need to scale out
Right.
our energy. Energy consumption is only going up. We need more energy. We need to be able to find a way to do it sustainably. Preferably if we can get green energy that is sustainable, that's great. And then on top of that, we're building them out in these rural communities that don't have a lot of opportunity and providing some of these communities with, like you said, the lifeblood to keep on their lifestyle. I mean, it's a win-win-win-win-win.
Yeah, it is all of those things.
I would say, and maybe this gets at something we're going to talk about with how do they feel about this? Because when you say sustainable, green, renewable, alternative, those words can be politically charged.
It's true.
And it does seem like half the country, when those words are used, gives some pushback. I don't know if we've seen pushback against this. This seems like a great idea. All the numbers make sense. Why is this not just clean cut when it comes to the political side?
Well, and I will, if I can interject. So I'm from Indianapolis originally, from the Midwest.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I thought was kind of refreshing about at least the politics when it came to Utah is you still have that core conservatism, but it also, because of the inversions, because of the the air quality issues,
we see it in front of us.
Yeah, you see it right there. So a lot of that, it seems like the environmental aspect of it is not as politically charged in Utah as it is in other conservative states. And in fact, I think it's more, I like the idea of the conservatism with with an environmental consciousness.
I like the Teddy Roosevelt approach.
Exactly.
He was big on that, conservatives and we should take a view on our environment and all that. But
yeah. So anyway, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you didn't cut me off at all. Just a fascinating conversation, and I just hope your listeners will really enjoy this. But I want to read you just maybe two quick paragraphs here from the letter that we sent to Utah legislators, because Utah is what's called energy policy-wise, it's called an all-of-the-above state. So supposedly you're not picking winners and losers. You're saying we embrace it all. Now, we don't have a lot of hydrology here in Utah, obviously, but we have lots of utility scale. But about 60% in that neighborhood of our electricity here at Weber State today is, and Weber State's a sustainability campus, and they've done all kinds of wonderful, great things. But let's say broader the state of Utah, about 60% is coal-based. Fossil fuel-based, coal-based. But the price of coal is becoming more and more expensive. And when I was first working in renewable energy and looking at it and trying to understand it, it was a little more expensive than coal. But no, it's way less expensive now. It's way less expensive. Yeah, you have the issue of reliability, because when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. But now, and we always used to talk about, but when we get to battery storage, it's a game changer. And so battery storage now is about a 4-hour on a large scale situation, about a 4-hour storage, and the report talks about storage, so it's a big thing. Let me just read this. This is the conclusion of our letter after we gave those statistics that we started off with. As you know, Utah does not have a mandatory renewable portfolio standard. Now, what that means is that a state like California does. So they have said, their legislature have said, the California Assembly and the Senate has said, we will have, by such and such a date, this X percent of our energy that is consumed within the state of California will be green energy. We'll say that. Utah doesn't have that. Utah is saying, we'll let the market dictate. And so we're reminding in this letter and with the report Utah policymakers about that. These investments are being driven by market economics, here's the economics department, and local conditions, not government mandates. And that's really the mission of the Western Way, to facilitate and to enhance that. The report also documents the rapid growth of battery energy storage and the emergence of next-generation geothermal projects, which is a huge thing in Utah now, in Beaver County, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the Utah Forge project out there. But Utah is a national leader in baseload renewable energy. As Governor Cox's Operation Gigawatt recognizes, Utah must significantly expand its energy production to meet surging energy demand from population growth, data centers, and advanced manufacturing, which you have referenced.
Yes, big data,
Connor,
big
which
on
you
the
both
data
have
centers.
referenced. This report makes clear that building out our renewable energy capacity is not only sound energy policy, it is also sound economic policy, particularly for rural counties hosting these projects.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why would a legislator say, no, What would be the pushback here?
Two pushbacks from some people, and then the first one's kind of there's a friend of mine. Maybe he'll listen to this. He's a senator from up in Box Elder County, and he's a rancher. And I've heard him in a testimony say, "I drive by that I just don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way it looks." And I thought to myself, Senator Sandel, I said, I got to tell you, there may be people going by your ranch who are saying, I don't like those cattle out there.
I'd like that to be a target.
I don't like those cattle out there. So we have to, okay, you don't like the way it looks.
Okay.
But it is, Andrew, and you, big property rights people in Utah, the way that it was developed and still that culture. And so you get to do, if you follow the law, you get to do with your land what you want to do with your land. As long as you follow the law, you fit within the regulations. The other thing I think is this whole thing is the whipsawing of, you'll take a Democrat administration, the Obama 8 years, and then you'll take the 4 years of Biden and then Trump back and Trump 2 back. And there were a lot of tax credits that incentivized these projects that have now been withdrawn through the big beautiful bill, if you will, and other things like that. And so, but Utah's never had any kind of tax incentives or a mandate like that. There were some tax incentives, but these are being withdrawn. But developers will find a way. If you know basic economics, if the market is there, and if I'm very simple here, Andrew, very pencils out, then they're gonna do the development.
Yeah, and this is something I've been saying I've been a Weber State for about 10 years, and it comes up with my students from time to time, and then it seems like every time you see a politician come out in support of like bringing big coal back, and we want to support the coal
clean
industry,
coal,
clean all
coal.
this stuff, and my students ask me what I think about it, and usually my answer is something along the lines of, the issue with policy is that it has to align with incentives.
Yeah.
And if you have policy that is working against 300 million people's worth of economic incentives, it will not work. And when you look at what's been going on with the cost of producing energy, across that portfolio, whichever one you want to, coal is just no longer very competitive.
It's exactly right.
It used to be, and at that point, if you want to go green, you have to provide the tax incentives. Now you don't need the tax incentives to, when they say, hey, we want to build more energy infrastructure, the cheapest way to do it now is through some of these, green energy type of projects, whether it's solar or wind or whatever it is. And so that's just the kind of natural economics of it. The coal industry, which again, even if you're looking at employment's been dropping like a rock for a long time. A lot of the stuff is more automated now. It's more machine-based. It's less people.
But you talked about AI, Cotter, when we kicked off the interview.
But yeah, it's been an industry in decline for a long time, and that's through all of these different administrations and all of these different, whether we're trying to promote it or we're trying to, stop it. It's been pretty consistent when you look at the numbers that it's just kind of naturally phasing itself out.
Exactly.
So,
and the other thing is, if you've seen these two big power points in Hunter and Huntington, down towards Farron, west of Price, south of Price, down in there in Carbon County area, there are just really there are no new active coal mines. Just economically, you economists here, it just doesn't make any sense. And you have the environmental regulations that have been somewhat relaxed. I'm not happy about that. Somewhat relaxed in the Trump administration. These environmental regulations that has extended the life of these two plants down there that's providing Utah's power. There's some others, but it's just we are in this energy transition, and you can't stop. When I say this to you, economists, you can't stop these market forces. You embrace the market forces, and that's one of the purposes of the Western way. Embrace the market forces. Let the market determine. Yes, you have to have regulations. Yes, you have to have protections. Yes, you have to have, but let the market dictate. Don't put government mandates on it. And that's one of the big challenges they have in California, of course. It's the fourth or fifth world's largest economy. But they have all of these regulations, and even with their huge economy, they just choke out stuff by that stuff.
Yeah, I always think about it like on a highway. On
like
a highway
a highway.
We have, it's you just drive. You're driving your own car, but we have markers for the different lanes. We have speed limits. We have different little regulations here and there. And what does that do? It helps to keep the traffic moving smoothly, right? It helps us get from point A to point B a little bit faster. That should be, I think, the goal of any of these regulations, of any of these policies, is not to hinder anyone in particular. Let the market decide still, but provide those guardrails that just keeps us moving in the right direction as we do so.
Yeah. Well said and well stated. But I hope that answered the question. Why, a couple of reasons why there's, we don't like the way it looks, and there have been some legislators, and I'm not happy about this either in Utah, who've kind of reordered in the state code they talk about the need for dispatchable, reliable energy. Yes. And that's going to be baseload stuff. Okay, we get that. And that's one of the big plays for nuclear in the state of Utah, to these small modular nuclear reactors, to have that baseload. But the market wants, my children want, they want cleaner energy.
Yeah. It's an interesting argument, because I feel like conservatives generally love capitalism. They love a free market capitalism. They and I think the politics behind renewable energy is there's some sort of incentive behind the scenes that is political in nature. But this is saying, hey, look, this is actually just totally market driven. This is saying this is what the supply and demand aligns with. And what I've kind of learned, I know I keep going back to this, is that renewable energy is not just nice to have. It's not just nice to say we're green and we're clean, and that feels good to say. But I hearken back to an interview, and whatever you think of Elon Musk, I think what he said was important. He said that renewable energy, we don't necessarily need it because it's nice to have. We're actually going to have to find additional sources of energy to power our future infrastructure. I just don't think we understand how much energy it's going to take to have electric vehicles, to have artificial intelligence, and to have the continual compute power of what the economy will look like in 2050. We actually can't just use fossil fuels. Yep. It's not just a politics thing. It is, we actually need better power sources or additional power sources
for America's and Utah's economic prosperity, which is everything is driven by energy. When you get down to it, as I got into it over these years, everything is based upon energy. You don't have energy, you can't grow, you can't have prosperity. You look at the challenges in Europe with getting that Russia is a gas station, right? And these countries in the like Belgium, for example, they are totally dependent on Russian oil, and that's not a good thing, is it? That's not a good thing to be dependent on.
And one of the things that I've kind of learned, especially given the last 2 weeks of what's been going on in the Middle East, is the more independent you are, the more power you have in the world. If you're completely dependent on another country,
that is really well said.
You have to make certain decisions you may not make if you were independent.
Really well said.
And whatever you think of the past administrations and current administrations, America is in a good position of we're somewhat self-sustaining. We have resources here, and we have the ability to kind of make our decisions based on our own independent needs, rather than saying we're totally reliant on Russia, so we got to go along with them. And so, again, energy is important for all those things you said, but it's also important to having a sovereign nation and getting to kind of live our ideals because we have energy. And so, it's all making sense. I think we as we try to land the plane on this, something I want to ask is, as a young student, or me, I'm kind of 6 or 7 years out of college. How can someone like me get knowledgeable about this and get involved in this? Because I think there is a great want from the younger generation to be involved. But with all of the things in life, sometimes you just kind of say, I don't have time to worry about energy and water.
I just want the lights to go on. I just want the lights to go on.
I just want to click it and it goes on. And it's funny, we talk about this every year. This is to do with water, but we're always in a drought. But oh well, like my sprinklers still turn on. Like what is the actual problem here? How does someone from kind of the younger generation, get to know about this, get involved? What can they do to be a part of, helping Utah be on that scene of renewable energy?
Well, I think for your listeners, really our baseload thing is to go to thewesternway.org and to look at this report, because I think this will give you a really baseload of information. And Andrew, the numbers don't lie. The numbers are what the numbers are. We haven't made any of these up. We commissioned, partnered with the department, the Center for the Crossroads Economics Center. Thanks, guys. Partnered with you and asked for your help to do this. And the numbers don't lie.
Yep.
It is amazing. Thing. Okay, how do you get involved? Well, obviously, number one, you get informed with the time that you have. You get informed, and you try to find someone. There are all kinds of organizations out there, but someone that is, philosophically, whatever maybe your philosophy, your political philosophy is evolving. It probably is. That someone is compatible with you, but I think you have to find trustworthy sources. I think there are lots of sources out there that are not trustworthy. But you find something that's trustworthy, that you can follow, that you can stay informed with, and that you can embrace and trust.
Yeah, spot on.
I love it.
Anything you want to ask or share before we?
No, this has been great, and I'll put a link to the report in the show notes.
Thank you.
And everything like that, and make sure it goes out. It's been an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Not just for the center itself. This has been great, but we have now 4 students who can have their name on an official document that says, hey, I've done these types of things. They can go into job interviews. They can do these types of things. So hopefully this is just the start of something bigger that we can continue to build on. Thank you so much for taking the time
what
to
a wonderful
walk us
opportunity,
through.
you guys, and thanks for what you're doing.
It's
And
been
thanks
awesome
for having me here today.
Yeah. And I'll just
Let's
say,
do it again.
Yeah, of course. Former Representative Steve Haney did refer to me as an economist, so we can put that on the record. On the
Own
record.
it, buddy.
Yeah, he's just trying to shed that accountant title.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today, and to our listeners. Of course, this has been our kind of foray into the podcasting. It's been a learning process for us, but we're getting some amazing guests. We're doing things in the community now with the Crossroads Economics Center. So this is just going to keep growing. And so we just ask that you subscribe, share this with your friends, listen to it, and take the advice of our guests. That's why I always like to ask, how can we actually put this into action? Go get informed. You'll realize that it is fun to be informed. It's fun to have some stakes in your community and think about, hey, when I turn the lights on, where is that coming from? And what if one day I couldn't turn those lights on, right? Think about those things. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wanna hear you go.